This is the Farm Monitor. For over 50 years, your source for agribusiness news and features from around the Southeast and across the country, focusing on one of the nation's top industries, agriculture. The Farm Monitor is produced by one of the largest general farm organizations, the Georgia Farm Bureau. Now here are your hosts, Ray DeLessio and Kenny Bergamy.
All right, time to have some fun and possibly learn something new in the process. Kenny B off this week, but as he always says, here is what's coming up on the show. Rural broadband. Sure, it's important for surfing the internet and sending emails, but what about those who homeschool their children and need high-speed internet? You're going to meet one family who says the struggle is real. This guy here, well, he's struggling with addiction to exotic birds, that is. Seriously, that's what he calls it, an addiction. And it all started as a youngster when his dad gave him some chickens to take care of. And then later, join us for another ag adventure, this time to Eatonton, Georgia, where you'll learn all about the benefits of automatic calf feeders. These stories and so much more starting right now on the Farm Monitor. Well, what started off as just an idea 8 years ago has now become one of the most recognizable brands in the entire state. And recently, Georgia Grown held their annual symposium, which featured workshops to improve production and distribution, as well as providing plenty of opportunity to network. Damon Jones reports.
Go grocery shopping anywhere in Georgia and you're likely to find this logo prominently displayed. The Georgia Grown program, which promotes and markets the state's #1 industry, recently welcomed hundreds of their members to its annual symposium in Macon for a chance to catch up with old friends while also making some new ones.
You get to network with so many other agritourism, Georgia Grown companies, and you get to see what they do, get to talk about what you grow on your farm or events they do, and you get to work together, learn from each other. We learn new laws, new procedures, things we need to keep up to date on.
And it's not just information and context this program provides its members, but also plenty of credibility, as the Georgia Grown brand has built up quite a reputation in a short amount of time.
It is just a brand that is well known now, I think. I know it's been 7 or 8 years now since we've had it. Our commissioner has made that brand well known, and I think now people see it in a store and they go to it.
So with produce, we're seeing that now people are no longer buying just oranges or apples. They're buying Besties from Valdosta, Satsumas, and they're buying branded products. So our produce farmers are branding their products. Our agritourism operators are telling people the authentic story of agriculture and educating people about the importance of agriculture.
Agritourism was the focus of a number of different workshops at this event. That underscores just how important it is to spread the story of agriculture to the youth in Georgia.
Let them see where their produce is grown. Teach them ag education. We call it agritourism. But get them to the farm. Let them see where their strawberries are grown, where their produce comes from. But let them see it growing. Let us see it planted. Let it see the whole process.
Speaking of children, Georgia Grown has partnered up with a number of school systems to provide fresh, locally grown produce for their cafeteria. And while that's certainly beneficial to the students, it's also incredibly valuable to the state's economy as well.
So not only do children have physical ties to those farmers, they have the ability to see the farmer that grew their product, and it becomes much more real to them. But it's also important for our local economy. So that money stays in the state of Georgia. It cycles through because those farmers then turn around and pay their staff and employees, and they go grocery shopping in their hometown. So it's much better for our state's economics as well.
So while the program might not even be a decade old, it's already showing its value to the agricultural industry and the consumers.
We like to tell people that a rising tide lifts all boats. So by every company utilizing that Georgia Grown product, it allows our consumers to know that their products are local and that money's staying in the state of Georgia. It allows our farmers to have a pride in the state and we're the best state, we're nature's favorite state. And it also allows our retailers to showcase local foods because that's more and more important every day to consumers as well.
Reporting from Macon, I'm Damon Jones for the Farm Monitor.
All right, thank you, Damon. In case you missed it, former Georgia Governor and current Secretary of Ag Sonny Perdue honored recently as the Georgia National Fairgrounds officially cut the ribbon on the brand new Perdue Arena. Secretary Perdue, of course, a native of Houston County, saying, quote, "I am not one to have my name on anything, but this is a real honor for me, and I am very grateful," end quote. The new arena will host both horse and livestock shows, as well as educational clinics or seminars involving livestock or horses. Unfortunately, rural Georgia is often overshadowed by big cities like Atlanta. But in reality, rural areas are the lifeblood of the state, not to mention the epicenter of Georgia's #1 industry. Still, there are a number of issues facing rural areas, one of those being the lack of broadband. Our John Holcomb spoke to one family affected by this issue.
Living in rural areas certainly has its upsides. You have some privacy. It's not as crowded as big cities like Atlanta, and it's quiet. But oftentimes, just because you live in a rural area, you aren't able to get the same things as those in more urban areas, and that shouldn't be the case. However, that's sadly the narrative, especially when it comes to broadband. In some parts of rural Georgia, some people are lucky to get 1 megabyte per second. One family that knows that too well is the Cave family.
We're a fourth-generation family farm. We raise beef cattle, broilers, and club goats for 4-H and FFA kids. We have 3 children, Deacon, Teller, and Emerson, that we homeschool.
Today's homeschooling consists of a lot of internet-based learning, and to add to that, Heather also runs a graphic design business out of her home, and often, meaning every day, needs the internet to do her job, but due to their location, can only get about 3 megabytes per second on a good day.
It affects us on the daily. And as far as being a stay-at-home mom and a farm wife and a homeschool teacher and trying to run a home-based business, I mean, all of those things they're just so big for our family, but with slow internet, it just puts you at a stop sign, if nothing else. I mean, a very huge yield. And to be able to function with a graphic design business, I'm constantly sending proofs to customers or ordering products that are coming in. And with slow internet, sometimes I get cut off right in the middle of an order, and it's almost like somebody hung up the dial-up. And then the order is halted, or the screen has to refresh and you lose all the data and you just have to restart again.
These issues go far beyond just individuals, as entire rural areas and small towns can suffer from businesses not being able to move in due to the lack of broadband connectivity. Even Heather lost an opportunity for another job due to her internet speed being too slow.
I was actually offered a job about 1.5 years ago with a company that would be strictly work-based out of my home, but it would be a lot of Skype calls, and it would have been a good economic boost for her family, a good income boost there. But because of the lack of service, I couldn't even get the Skype calls to load. I could not carry on the conversations or the meetings just to get to have the interview to get to the next level because the option wasn't there. So it really has restricted us in that aspect.
Sadly, this is an issue in rural areas all over the state and all over the country. 1 in 10 Georgians live in rural areas, and if you look at this map, the areas that are not in orange are unserved, while people in cities often have internet speeds that are 10 and 20 times faster than those in rural areas.
The advancements that technology has made within the inner cities, it does leave us kind of in the dust, and it maybe makes people discredit the people in the rural areas or the farmers that maybe may be locationally on the outskirts of the cities but are still doing big things for their communities, and I think it puts us at a disadvantage.
Reporting in Carnesville for the Farm Monitor, I'm John Holcomb.
After the break, he's considered one of the best when it comes to breeding rare and exotic birds, some on the brink of extinction. Hear for yourself how this recent UGA grad became what he calls a bird addict. Stay tuned. At first glance, one might assume they're watching video filmed in some African jungle or maybe a special zoo for exotic birds. That assumption, however, would be wrong. In fact, I'm standing here in Madison County, and all these birds you hear and see, all 2,000 of them, an estimation, by the way, they belong to one individual. Meet Vince Hicks, a recent UGA grad who received his degree in avian biology. Vince's obsession, or as he puts it, addiction to birds, began at the tender young age of 4 when his dad bought him a couple of Rhode Island red chickens.
At first, Vince's operation was small, but then, kind of like now, it grew at a rapid pace.
I think you got to be born with kind of a hoarding gene to begin with, but so I would save all the money off the eggs that I got, and buy feed, and then whatever I had left over, I would go through the Murray catalogs that they would send me, and I would try to pick out what types of chickens I was going to get, and I'd order 25 more, and then after a couple years doing that, you got 15, 20 different types of chickens, and it kind of just went from there.
In fact, according to Vince, it was at the age of 16 when his passion for exotic birds really took flight. Now at 23, he works 4 jobs to support his spending habits. They include everything from taking care of rental properties to working directly with Dr. Adam Davis in UGA's Poultry Science Research Lab.
Being addicted to birds, you got a big feed bill, so you've got to be able to fund it. And it's like there's certain birds that, yeah, you could make good money on if you wanted to, but my problem is I'm trying to build the collection. So every time I hatch something, I'm trying to trade it with somebody to get something else I don't have. And if you're in this for money, you're probably not a very good hobby, because if you're addicted like I am, you're just buying more birds. It's never enough,
Rattle off the bird species that you have.
Oh Lord, I don't know. I've got multiple species of ducks, geese, swans, swamp hens, thick knees, lapwings, lots of pheasants, tinamou, francolins, couple of parakeets, different types of hookbills, quail, partridge, just more. It goes on from there. So, there's a lot of birds that are just really flamboyant and beautiful that everybody likes, but I tend to like the birds that are more rare and nobody really keeps, because there's not as many of them, and they're maybe not as pretty, but somebody needs to be breeding them or they're not going to be around. And then I have birds like the Victoria crown pigeon that one day I hope to have here, because they're just amazingly beautiful, but it's just so expensive at this point. To move up that ladder, you got to work at it every day, I guess. About every week, I'm headed somewhere to pick up some birds. Somebody will call and say that they're getting too old, or that maybe they just have birds for sale, and I'll have saved up a little money and I'll go buy. I got back from Tampa yesterday picking up birds. I've traveled out to Louisiana and pick up birds, and all over the Southeast. And if they're further, I'll get them shipped, unless it's a large quantity of birds, then I would drive and pick them up.
Even more impressive than his variety of birds are the cages in which they're housed in. Each one hand-built personally by Vince and family members.
Well, my cousin Warren, he's been a big help. He's retired, and so in his off time, he even builds some pens without my help, and he'll come help me build aviaries, and we'll spend all day sometimes digging trenches to bury metal and putting wire up, and just it's actually a lot of fun when you have people that you like and help you with it.
Now, as far as that degree in avian biology, Vince admits it's going to be difficult putting it to good use because of his collection, something he'll explain here shortly. For now, though, Vince tells me he'll continue working those 4 jobs to support his habit. However, don't be surprised if you see him someday sporting a white coat and checking your vitals.
So it's kind of complicated, because with being an avian biology major, a lot of the people are going into the industry, and the biosecurity I've knocked myself out of about 90% of the jobs, because they don't want you having birds at home when you work in the industry a lot of the times. So I've always said I want to go to medical school, but recently Dr. Davis has talked me into getting my PhD if I can get into that. So I need a job that can support my addiction, because.
So you say addiction, are you addicted to birds?
Oh, it's awful. It's beyond awful.
Do we need an intervention here or what?
I don't know. My dad always told me he guessed it's better than drugs, and he used to complain about all the pens getting built in the yard, and he would say it looks like a junkyard, and then when somebody comes to look, he wants to show it off. So I think it's pretty interesting how people react. But yeah, it's an addiction. It's pretty awful. And I don't think it gets better, so.
Yeah, like he said, though, it could be worse. Up next, it's time for another ag adventure. This time, host Aaron Naismith is learning all about efficient and effective methods to achieve intensive calf feedings.
right, I'm Stormy Sparks. I'm an extension entomologist with the University of Georgia. I work primarily with vegetables, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the issues we have in vegetables. One of the more challenging issues we face is Diamondback Moth. I've been dealing with this pest for over 30 years now, and insecticide resistance in Diamondback Moth is a huge issue. We've probably got 10 or more different modes of action that we can potentially use against Diamondback Moth, and we have some resistance to every mode of action in Georgia, which is kind of unique. It makes it a real challenge. You can see here on the damage on the plants, when you get large populations, you get a lot of holes in the plant, and even just a few holes. They don't eat that much material, but a few holes makes it unmarketable. So one of the things we're dealing with here is trying to maintain control with a limited number of modes of action. So we work with the growers, we work with populations in individual fields, we collect those populations, we test them against multiple modes of action and try and find out what mode of action, what product will work best in a given field. Something that would be great for us if we could do it would be a host-free period, and that's one of the challenges of being in South Georgia, is we can grow produce year-round. That allows pests to develop year-round. We try to control them year-round. We select for resistance year-round, so we end up with very severe problems because of the part of the country we're in. It's a great area to grow vegetables, but it's also a very challenging area to grow vegetables. All right, what we're looking at here are pepper weevils and jalapeno peppers. And basically what happens in peppers is a weevil such as this will go in. The adult lays an egg. It bores a hole with its mouth parts, turns around, lays an egg in the pod, then seals it. And then the grub develops within the pod. And then it becomes an adult in the pod and then chews its way out. So pepper weevil, are one of the reasons they're very difficult to control, is because the only stage that we can really attack is the adult as far as insecticidal control. So we have to try to kill them before they oviposit. So prevention is very important. Your threshold in peppers is almost zero, or basically it is zero. If you see pepper weevil in the field, you've got a severe problem. Pepper weevil have become a much more common problem for us in the last 3 years. It was about 3-4 years ago. We had some severe problems throughout South Georgia in the fall crop, very late fall crop, extremely high populations, as high as I've ever seen anywhere. And we identified the problem. One of the problems then was the resistance to pyrethroid insecticides. Almost everything that we used at that time prior to that for pepper weevil control were pyrethroids. So even where growers knew they had a problem, they were spraying pyrethroids and they were getting no control. So we identified that problem. So we've got more efficacious products that we're using against them now. The other problem that we've seen in the last 2 years is that we're obviously overwintering populations in South Georgia. If you look back 10 years ago, we rarely had problems with pepper weevil. And it's because it's not that it gets cold enough to kill the weevil here, it gets cold enough to kill the host plants, and then they starve during the winter. And we go to very low, if not zero population, so we just didn't have high populations. So it's very easy to move the pepper weevil around. It's very difficult to control it, so that's one of the things we're really working with, encouraging all of our growers, is trying to practice good cultural practices so that you don't overwinter weevils. We try to get rid of the pods. Jalapeno pods cause us a real problem because they're much more stable in the environment than a bell pepper pod. If you go out in January and look at pepper fields, you will not find pods in a bell pepper field, but you can still find pods in a jalapeno field, and that pod provides food for the weevil. They're not reproducing in those pods that are off the plant, but it's a food source and allows them to overwinter and survive until the spring crop. And then we've got to hit them with insecticides very aggressively in order to prevent infestation in those crops. So this is it's not a new pest for us, but it's a much more consistent pest than we've had in the past.
Hey friends, welcome back to another Ag Adventure. I'm excited to have you close to my hometown in Eatonton, Georgia. We're at T&W Farms. It's a dairy operation, and we're going to show you a different side to the dairy industry. Some of the previous episodes you've seen on Farm Monitor included the robotic systems for actually milking the cows. We're going to bring you back a few months and talk about the calf and the calving side of the industry. And to do that, I'm excited to be with one of my young farmer and rancher members, Mr. Jesse Patrick. Jesse, tell us about who you are, what you do, and what we get to experience today.
Well, I'm Jesse Patrick, as Aaron said. We are a 7th generation farmer, and we have a dairy equipment business in which we do sales, service, and installation. And today we're here, like she said, at T&W Farms at their calf barn facility, where we're going to be showing automatic calf feeders. So this is the automatic calf feeder. These units here on this farm are powder only farm, so you put the milk powder in the top, and the milk powder mixes with water in what we call the blender. So it's actually got, just like your house blender, it's got teeth on the bottom that spin. And so it usually makes up about a half a liter, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually like 0.1 gallons. And it mixes up to a consistency that we program into the unit itself. And then as the calves are drinking on it, the pumps in the back here go to each individual station. Okay. And so whenever a calf comes in, it identifies her and says, okay, she can drink, she has this much she needs to drink. And so the pumps, as you can see now, will start pumping. When she starts sucking on the nipple, it senses a pressure drop, so then the pumps trigger and pump the milk from this blender through the pumps themselves and out to the calves.
So everything is perfectly portioned depending on the calf?
Correct.
Okay.
So each calf has their allotted amount of portion per every 4 hours. So this unit is set up to 2.5 liters, which ends up being about a little over half a gallon each time she comes in.
What's so interesting to me is the dairy industry really has thought about every stage of development. So I noticed this when we walked in, and it was curious, why are we doing formula at the same time we would be doing a grain supplement? So tell us why this is also introduced in the group barn.
So initially we like to start it out to get them used to it, because in the end this is what they'll be eating after they leave here. So to start out, we with calves that first come in here, we put it in here as kind of an enticement to say, hey, come check it out. But it just gets them used to eating grain, and the grain helps develop the rumen, like I said earlier, and it's the scratch factor. So it scratches the rumen and develops it to where in the end when they are eating corn silage or hay or something like that, they can pull more nutrients out of it and use that energy to put into milk. So the feeder will actually cause the calves to go away from the feeder itself and migrate over here, because they're looking for something else to eat. And this is already here, and they're already used to eating it, and they say, hey, well, maybe I'll go eat some more of that. And so that's another good quality of the calf feeder, is that it ramps down how much she can drink by the end of it to where she's already eating feed, and we don't have to break her off of the feeder itself.
Well, y'all, I hope that you've enjoyed today. Jesse, amazing reminder of just, number one, how much we need farmers, but number two, also that we need skilled labor, because this technology has to be maintained somehow. So I appreciate the fact that you are farmers. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your skilled labor as well. Make sure you go home today, have a big glass of milk, slice of cheese, finish your night with a big bowl of chocolate ice cream. And as always, I'm so grateful that you got to be on another Ag Adventure with us.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Great job. And thank you for watching the Farm Monitor. We'll see you next week.